Hello, I'm Kate Freeman, and this is the Daily Dollop. On this episode of the Daily Dollop, we're going to talk about food guilt and our judgmental food culture, what the research says about food guilt and then your perceived control over certain foods, and finally, how to stop feeling guilty about what you eat. Well, welcome everybody back to the Daily Dollop. My name is Kate Freeman. I'm a registered nutritionist and the founder of the Healthy Eating Hub. And fun fact about me is that Mr. Freeman and I, my blessed husband, in the early years of our marriage, we actually fought so bad about pancake thickness that we banned making pancakes in our house. And I know that seems really immature, but he wanted to make like thick, fluffy pancakes, gross, and I wanted thin and crispy ones, like crepe all the way. And we just used to get into so many fights, like telling each other how to make the pancakes. And anyway, both really stubborn. So it got so bad that we actually were like, that's it, pancakes are banned in our house. But you'll be pleased to know that we did actually compromise and we make just a middle of the road pancake, which is the best of both worlds. And we now enjoy that semi-regularly with our children. And it's actually funny, when I was talking about the fun facts that I was going to put in the dollop to my kids, my daughter was like, oh, I can't believe that you guys never used to make pancakes. I'm glad you sorted yourselves out before we came along. Bless her. Nice to know her priorities are in the right places. Well, on to today's show where we're talking about food guilt. And, you know, it's a really common feeling to feel guilty about eating particular foods. Do you feel guilty when you eat certain things? And, you know, does it make you feel bad? Does it spiral you into further poor eating habits? Does it make you feel stressed and anxious? Do you feel frustrated or disgusted with yourself when you eat certain things? It's certainly not an uncommon feeling, but it's a really odd feeling considering that foods hold no moral value that we would feel guilty about them. The thing is that often people associate feeling guilt with eating certain foods or certain behaviors as being a motivator to not do the bad thing again. And certainly, you know, in traditional thinking or with psychology, guilt is what we call a negative motivating factor, in that, you know, if we do feel guilty about certain behaviors like stealing or, you know, calling someone bad names, is that we don't do that behavior again because it makes us feel bad. And so we often find, you know, if we beat ourselves up about eating certain foods, that maybe that will help keep us more motivated to eat healthier. Well, you would actually be incorrect in that thinking. And in fact, you know, creating food rules and, you know, beating yourself up over eating certain things and then subsequently feeling bad or guilty about it is actually counterproductive to healthy eating behaviors, and it's not helping you at all. But I'm going to get onto that shortly when I look at some really cool research. But I guess, you know, one of the things I like to do on the show is talk about nutrition woo, like just the crazy stuff that's all over social media and just general popular culture around nutrition and food. And I think when it comes to food guilt, it's no wonder we feel guilty about food, because diet culture pretty much infiltrates nearly every area of our life with food rules. And so, you know, the very nature of a rule means that there's right and wrong. You're either keeping the rule or breaking the rule. So, of course, if you do the wrong thing and break the rule, then you should feel guilty about it because you did the wrong thing. And so, you know, I think then the fact that food rules just like permeates our whole culture is that then there's this whole layering of food judgment that comes on top of it. And so we judge ourselves, we're weak, undisciplined, disgusting, gluttonous, or all the sorts of words we call ourselves. But we also judge others. You know, how many times have you lined up in the supermarket and seen the food in someone else's trolley, judged them on that food, and then even more so looked at their body and cast judgment even further? And we do it often without thinking. There's a lot of stigma around body size and food choices, and it's a really challenging world that we live in when it comes to food. And so I think we need to be really careful about this association of judgment, food rules, because it actually does lead to food guilt, and food guilt is actually counterproductive. Because the truth of the matter is there are no rules. You can eat carbs after 4 p.m. Bread is not a terrible thing that makes you put on weight or spirals you into inflammation. Carbohydrates are in general not evil nutrients that are sewing your pants tighter or anything like that. There are no rules. There are just key nutrition principles and dietary patterns. So foods that we eat every single day that promote health in our body. It's not individual foods that we can blame health or poor health on. And that's really, really important. And so if an individual can apply these principles to their life every day in really small, sustainable habits, that is what's going to make them healthy, not eating or not eating certain foods. And so I want to get into the research now, and it's one of my most favorite studies. It's called Chocolate Cake, Guilt or Celebration, Associations with Healthy Eating, Perceived Behavioral Control, Intentions, and Weight Loss. So it's the chocolate cake study. I mean, already it has an excellent name. So it was conducted in 2014. And the reason I love it so much and found it so interesting is that it looked at the association of healthy eating attitudes with weight loss and perceived behavioral control. So it was looking at, if you looked at a food or ate a food and felt guilt, does that have a flow-on effect to your control over certain foods, your ability to lose weight, etc., compared to if you ate a food for celebration? So the study found that guilt over a particular food, so chocolate cake, was not motivating or made people eat better. In fact, participants associating chocolate cake with guilt did not report more positive attitudes or stronger intentions to eat healthy than those associating chocolate cake with celebration. Isn't that fascinating? So the more guilt they found they had over eating particular foods, so chocolate cake or chocolate, could be any kind of food, chips, whatever makes you feel guilty when you eat it because you feel like you shouldn't be eating it, that actually shows that your level of perceived control over that food is really low. And it doesn't actually make you eat better or have positive attitudes towards food or higher intentions to eat healthy long term. Fascinating stuff. And the thing that I think is really, really important that we must understand when it comes to making changes to our health long term is that foods are associated with feelings. They are. And to just think of it as being fuel and nothing else is quite a primitive view of nutrition. We need to layer in the sociology and the psychology and the cultural aspect of food to really start to understand our own behaviors around it. Pleasure and enjoyment is associated with food, but also feelings of worry and concern. And so the sort of hypothesis around this study was that it was suggested that worries and concern around food actually reduce people's quality of life, and that they're unproductive feelings when it comes to health and weight control. And that's why my personal vision and the vision of the Healthy Eating Hub is to set people free from food stress and teach them how to eat well for the rest of their life, because worry and concern, stress and anxiety around food is counterproductive to long-term health. You can't actually make long-term improvements to health if you're feeling this around food. So if weight loss is your goal, but food stress and anxiety is something that's really plaguing you, I would argue that you would fare better by focusing your intentions on your attitude and relationship with food and improving that, and then that leading to healthy weight control, than to just keep doing diet after diet after diet, doing more rules, more restrictions, and just feeling more and more stressed and worried about food. You know, food control is a really interesting thing to think about, and this study sort of looks at it in a lot more depth than we sort of do on a day-to-day basis, and they make a couple of fascinating statements. One of the things that it said, which I really loved, is it proposed this idea of a delayed cost dilemma, which sounds like a bit of a mouthful, but here's how they explain it. So from a self-control perspective, eating chocolate or chocolate cake can be seen as a delayed cost dilemma in that there's positive short-term consequences. So it's delicious and tastes yummy, makes us feel better, really enjoyable, but then negative long-term consequences. So I'm not losing weight, I'm consuming more energy than my body needs, etc. And then it goes on to say that then guilt after an initial violation of one's diet may result in loss of control, because the dieter now believes that there is no point in further restraining their eating as the damage has already been done and corrective action is useless. Now get this, there is a study that then this study links to that looks at the what the hell effect. This is the what the hell effect. It's when you eat something that makes you feel guilty, that now you think, what's the point? I've stuffed it up. What the hell? And you know, bless science, it studied the what the hell effect. All right, so if that's something that you really struggle with, I want to give you 4 tips and key points to help reduce your guilt around what you eat. The first thing you have to do is you have to stop labeling food as good or bad. Food is not good or bad. It holds no moral value. You are not a terrible person because you eat something that's unhealthy. You are a human being who's worthy and valuable, and you are eating. And you want to start to change your language around food. You're not naughty. You didn't kill somebody. You know, you didn't steal lip gloss or something like that. You just ate some food. That's all you did. You didn't do anything right or wrong. The next step is to focus on foods to eat more of, rather than being restrictive and trying to stop eating certain foods, the foods that make you feel guilty. So focus on eating more veggies, you know, focus on putting more minimally processed foods into your diet. Focus on going, have I got, you know, my 5 serves of vegetables in today, or my 2 serves of fruit? Have I drunk enough water today? Focus on what to do rather than what not to do. You want to also start removing the rules. Like if you've avoided carbs after 4 p.m. for your whole life, just start eating carbs after 4 p.m. and good things can come from that. Like nothing bad will happen to you. Just start to remove the rules from your life and focus on nutrition principles. Lastly, the last point is ditching perfection. There is no such thing as the perfect diet. It doesn't exist. Like what even is it? You know, nutrition is so broad and varied. It depends on so many individual factors for people. And like I've said throughout this entire podcast, is that there are no rules. There are simply key nutrition principles that can be applied to people's lives in a myriad of different ways. So look guys, that's it for today's episode. If you do need help with learning how to apply nutrition principles to you in a really sustainable and incremental way, that is what my online program does. It teaches you nutrition and then actually helps you put it into practice. But you're just focusing on one habit at a time. It's really slow and steady. It's not overwhelming or crazy. And then the outcome is that you're a long-term healthy eater because you've actually learned to find what works for you and you can do it. It's realistic and sustainable. So check out that. We'll pop the link to that into the show notes. Otherwise, have a fabulous day, team, and we'll see you in the next episode.